Hello, and thank you for joining us here on Ask a Historian. I'm Matthew Wilkinson, historian with Heritage Mississauga. Please send in your questions to history@heritagemississauga.org as we explore the fascinating stories of the city of Mississauga here together. Like, subscribe, and follow us and stay up to date on all the heritage happenings with Heritage Mississauga. On this week's episode of Ask a Historian, we are joined by Fran Murphy, a longtime friend of Heritage Mississauga, member of the Halton-Peel branch of Ontario Ancestors, and the historian for Eden United Church, as we highlight the 200th anniversary of Eden United Church. Thank you, Fran, for joining us here on Ask a Historian. It's not that often that we get to celebrate a 200th anniversary of something in our community, so it is a something to be noted and reflected upon here. The 200th anniversary of Eden United Church. So thank you, Fran, for joining us.
Well, thank you for asking me. Yes.
Well, I can ask, but it's up to you to say
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Fire away.
So tell me a little bit about the history of the congregation that is now Eden United Church.
From the very beginning?
Well, I'll leave it for you to wander down that lane. We're 200 years, so is there a founding date, like a formal date that's recognized as the founding of the church?
There is, it's a little skeptical about the actual date, but with the Samuel Switzer came to the area from Ireland.
Yep.
Tipperary, Ireland. He and a bunch of other people, among them the names were Masons and Cordingleys and Switzers and Mays and Waits. And they all came from Ireland. They were given land grants from Upper Canada. So they decided to go to Canada. And the land was, I don't know if you want to go get into this, but the land was bought from the Mississauga Indians, the indigenous people. But you know all about that. We won't
no, through treaty, they were given land grants after what was indigenous territory. Absolutely.
Yes.
But that was so. Math is not my strong point, but if it's 200 years old, that means we're looking at 1824 as the founding date. So
yes, they came up Governor's Road up towards Streetsville, and there were a bunch of other settlers that settled in Streetsville, and they got this land on what is now Dairy Road and Shelter Bay.
Right.
And that's where Samuel Switzer set up his settlement and his house, and he was 55 years old anyway, and I think he had 9 children. 5 of them were grown-up sons, so they all established many houses within this area.
First becomes known as Switzer's Corners locally, right?
That's what they called it, Switzer's Corners, and also just beside them was McCurdy's Corners.
Right.
So in that area, which is now Meadowvale, Dairy Road. And they were Wesleyan Methodists, and he brought with him a whole bunch of Bibles, and so they started worshiping the people in the area in his home. And then they established with the Wesleyan Methodist church in Toronto in the Yonge Street Missions, and they would send out what they call saddlebag preachers.
Right.
Circuit ministers would ride from one class to another. So we figure that the class that Switzer was ahead of was formed in 1824 by the Wesleyan Methodists. So that's why we established the date as being 1824.
Right. And I have people, it's kind of funny. I often get these inquiries of why is there a little cemetery in the midst of a subdivision? And I always say, well, the cemetery was there first.
Yes, it was there first. Yeah.
So my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the original building that was served as a church was in behind the cemetery, like a little log cabin, little log church.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was built in 45, somewhere around
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And it was a tiny little log cabin church. And behind it, they established the cemetery, which is
Right.
still there
Still
today.
there. Yeah.
And that's what they called Switzer's Church on Switzer's Corners.
And then was it Isaac Waite that donated land across the street for a new church, the brick church?
Yes,
Yeah.
that was in 1869.
Right.
And because they were running out of room, they would have all these camp services
Right.
with the preachers on horseback, and they were just running out of room. So Isaac Waite donated his part of his land across the street.
Right. And so the church that was there, I'm just trying to. This is the church at the northeast corner of what is today Derry and Copenhagen. There's an empty lot there in the
Yes,
corner where the church was. How many was it? One building, or was it? Did it have to get rebuilt? I can't remember. I'm trying to think of that timeline of the building.
it did have to be rebuilt, but
Okay.
at first it was one building,
Right.
and it was was room enough for 400 people in the sanctuary, and they
Wow.
had visiting areas and rooms for the minister, and it was quite the place.
Right.
We call it the old red brick church.
Old red brick church.
Yes.
And so in just in terms of we're putting together the story. So when Meadowvale comes to be, the church is still there. It's still home to Eden United, or what becomes, I guess it was Eden Wesleyan Methodist, and in the
Yes.
1920s becomes Eden United. Um, why was the name Eden chosen? Do you know any story, anything behind the name itself?
Word has it that the minister at the time, I believe his name was Samuel Howland.
Yep.
Um, the farm area around it was so rich that he decided to call it Eden
Right.
after the Garden of Eden.
Fair enough. Can't argue with
Well,
that.
fair enough. Yeah. They
So
had a meeting about it, I think, with the other people, and they made other suggestions, but everyone liked Eden. So
Eden.
there you
I
go.
I can't argue with the name.
Yeah.
The so just we know the present home for Eden United Church is
Yes.
at Battleford and Winston Churchill, so not that far away from the historic roots. But the church congregation has moved several times. We talked about the old log church, and then
Hmm.
across the street they built a brick church, and then they rebuilt the brick church on the same site, and then you moved. Can you talk a little bit about the different places that the I guess in a sense it's the congregation is 200 years old, so the different places the
Yes.
congregation has met.
Well, first of all, they had a fire in 1916 or so. Um, there are lots of stories of how this fire happened, but the main one is that it was around Christmas time, and they had a furnace in the basement, uh, and a way a stranger, a homeless man, apparently came in and had his supper there, and somehow started a fire in the basement. And they say that because they found a plate and saucer
Oh,
beside where the fire was. They
fair
think,
enough.
oh, it was a homeless man that came in seeking shelter because it was just before Christmas. But it took them a year or so to rebuild it
Right,
from the fire. And then it was damaged again by a cyclone in 1923. The roof blew off.
right.
And then again in 1953, the roof that they repaired blew off again during Hurricane Hazel.
Oh, good Lord.
But yeah, it survived all that.
Yeah.
And then Marlborough Properties came along and wanted to build up this place called Meadowvale now. And after much deliberation, the church congregation congregants decided to sell it to them.
Right. And then you moved into the church campus area in behind Meadowvale
Yes,
Town Center, right?
yes. It was the church was demolished, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but and many of their artifacts and stuff were auctioned off. So we don't have many artifacts left, unfortunately.
Right.
But it was decided that they were trying this experiment of having different congregations of churches in one place, and each would have its own um, worship area,
Right.
and then it was in a circle, and then they could come together sometime during other practices. And it included the Anglican Church, which is now St. Francis. St. Francis is still there.
Right.
Eden, um, White Oaks Presbyterian. I think that was it. Yeah.
Okay. Because I know that facility is still there. Like you said, St. Francis
Yes.
is still meeting there.
St.
So
Francis is there. But
so and then from there you lead the congregation makes the decision that we're going to build a new church. And that's the building we see today. And when did that take place?
we moved church campus in 1980.
Uh,
Yeah, around there. And it soon became apparent that it was so popular because Marlborough had just built up this community, and we had
right.
new people coming in with young families, and they were looking for a place to go to church, and they started going to Eden, and in 5 years we outgrew the place. So now what do we do? There were 450 members that came to the church.
Right.
Yeah, we had 2 services going, and it was still too crowded. So what do? Let's build another church.
And then that's where the property at Battleford and Winston
Yes,
Churchill comes to be, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it took. They said the uh the the architects and the builder said, "Oh, it'll take a year." Well, we were there waiting for 3 years.
Oh Lord.
And all that time we were at the Meadowvale Secondary School in their cafeteria. That's where we worshiped for 3 years.
Oh Lord.
Yes, it was very crowded, and the ministers like to tell the story of when they were taking the sermon or giving the sermon, the Coke bottles in the back, the Coke machine would gurgle and pop and make all this noise.
Yeah.
And so you knew you were in a high school.
And one of the things, though, you've never, I mean, the church itself, I don't think has ever lost sight of its deep roots. You know, here we are celebrating the 200th
Yes.
anniversary of this congregation, and it's always been situated in the rough geographic area of what is Meadowvale today, and yet you have that old settler era cemetery at the corner of Shelter Bay
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and Dairy. Can you tell a little bit, just even some names or some stories? You already referenced the Switzers and the Waits, but people drive by that cemetery and perhaps not realize how truly historic the roots of that cemetery are. And
Yeah. It goes back 200 years.
yeah,
And well, obviously, since Samuel Switzer left his church, um, I think the first burial was by a young child because there was a diphtheria outbreak,
right,
and a lot of children were buried there at first. Um, Most of the Switzers are there. Masons, the Mays. Um, Rutledge's, the last burial was made for Shirley Rutledge, who was the wife of John Rutledge. and she was a longtime member of the church. And they still take burials, but they not registered. You have to be already registered to be in there
Right. And also, like, I imagine connected to the,
and connected to,
ancestry tree
well,
there.
say the Rutledges or something.
Yeah.
And one story I found was the Miller family,
Okay.
um, and one of their sons, Fletcher Miller, was working for his father in Streetsville as a bookkeeper. And around when World War I broke out, 1916, he signed up because he wanted to go on an adventure. He was tired of being a bookkeeper. So he signed up with I believe it was the Central Ontario Regiment, and went off to France, and he was killed at Vimy Ridge.
Right. And there's a stone in the back commemorating him as well in the back
Yes,
corner of the cemetery.
yes.
It's there's a little I don't know if I've ever told you this, but there's something that we do as a family every year. I live in nearby, we on the evening of Remembrance Day, my family with my kids, we go out and we put poppies on Fletcher's grave. So it's
Oh, very
our,
nice.
our own little tribute to somebody
Yeah.
who was from this area, and there's he's not buried there, we know that, but he's
No, he's not buried
remembered
there.
there by the families. So
He's in France, in
yeah.
Calais, I believe.
Yes, yeah, Pas de Calais. But no, there's an example right there of Fletcher was not the only son of this area to, volunteer to serve, but he is one of the
But
casualties. And
yeah,
again, it just shows you the roots of Eden's history. I mean, that's over
yes,
100 years ago now,
yes,
and yet all these families that that lived in this area and farmed here and homesteaded here long before Mississauga came to be, they connect back to this historic cemetery in the midst of our modern city.
yes.
It is remarkable. So Eden, the current home of Eden Church, I guess if my math is right, either your fourth or fifth home, depending on your your count.
It's
Um,
about the fifth home.
yeah.
Yes.
And okay, do you have the date that it opened? You said it took 3 years to build, but when did it open?
1989.
1989. And it's quite a dynamic facility, isn't it? It's
Yes.
not just a church. It's yeah,
Daycare center.
yeah. And you've got meeting halls, and you're quite a dynamic facility is what where I'm getting at. It's
Yes.
yeah.
So it's quite a large narthex, which we use for all kinds of dining things, special occasions, murder mysteries. We've had 3 or 4 murder mysteries. Is that what you were getting at?
And they are fantastic, by the way.
We collaborated with Aaron Mills United to put on murder mysteries for 3 or 4 years, and then COVID struck, and we had to
Right.
stop doing it. And now people have gone their separate ways, and it's
Kind of hard to restart sometimes after
yeah,
COVID, but
yeah, it was
hopefully you'll
hard.
be able to. You've got a church with this or a congregation with these historic roots. Again, it's not every day we celebrate something that's 200 years old in our city.
Right.
Um, are there traditions within the church, within the congregation that, touch back onto some of the early years? I don't know if that's a good question to answer, and that people change with the times, but I mean, here you are, yeah, you connect with the history of your congregation, the history of your community. But are there things within the church, traditions within the church that kind of span the generations?
Uh we're fortunate to have a very good music groups. We have handbell choirs, senior choir, a folk group, and an organ, 2 organs.
Oh, well,
So it's a very good music group.
right,
Um, and after the Easter service, we ask all the people from the congregation if they want to come up and sing the Alleluia Chorus with us.
Right.
And that started, I don't know, at least 50 years ago that we do
Really?
that. Yeah, I really look forward to doing that.
That's a neat thing to come down as well. So I mean, obviously that ties into perhaps even some musical roots to the community in terms of just how to express
Yes.
yourself.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 We've had a lot of musical concerts there. We recently had a concert with just our music groups as a special thing to celebrate what music groups we have, what great music groups we have during this celebration year. And a lot of people turned out. They just wanted to hear us sing, and we talked about the history of the choirs and the handbells, and it was a really good night. Yeah.
That's nice to hear.
So yeah.
So, in terms of anniversary celebrations, I mean, this is if I can use the word institution, within the Meadowvale area, again, for generations upon generations of people that have passed through its, passed through the area, let alone the church itself. Um, what are you doing to celebrate the 200th anniversary?
Well, we've been started celebrating with special ceremonies and things since January.
Right.
Um, once a month, myself and the Reverend John Ambrose, who used to be the minister at Eden and has now retired, and he sings in the choir.
Okay.
He and I have been giving little historical vignettes once a month to talk about the various years in Eden. We started with Samuel Switzer, of course, and John has talked about the music groups, and we do have the rose window,
Right.
which is become our you see it everywhere, our Lego, our Lego, not Lego, you know what I mean.
Kind of your legacy part of the window, like
Yes, part of
I
the
like
rose
coming through that.
window.
Is quite
Yes.
something. And
So
is
and
that
that has been well received,
yeah?
that people like to hear that. So
The in terms of just occasions that that listeners might be be able to engage with, in the very near future, you have anniversary. What's the right word? Uh, meet
celebration?
celebration on May 5th, correct?
Yes, that's right. It's culminating on May the 5th.
Yeah.
We've invited former people, former congregants who have moved away, former ministers to attend what will be a anniversary service. We have a reception where we're going to have lunch, and people will just be able to walk around and speak to people they haven't seen in years. So I'm really looking forward to it.
It should be a lot of fun.
Nice to see a lot of people that I haven't seen in a long time.
And this is at 10 a.m. on Sunday, May 5th, the special
Yes,
200th anniversary service for Eden United Church.
yes, and you can go to our website to register for it if you're interested.
Yeah, and at the end of this program, we'll link to the website as well for anyone who's interested. And
Okay.
but just I guess behalf of the city of Mississauga, congratulations
Oh, well, thank you. Yes.
to Eden United Church and from Heritage Mississauga and Ask a Historian. Really appreciate you spending some time here to explore the history, the story of such a venerable institution here in Mississauga. Here we are in the 50th anniversary of the city of Mississauga, celebrating something that is 200 years
100
old.
years. Yeah, you're celebrating an anniversary as
Little bit
well.
of a hard to understand aspect here, but I always say when you see something like this, you understand that yes, the city might be 50 years old, but people have lived here since long before the city came to be. And Eden is certainly a treasured part of that
Mhm.
story here in the city of
Mhm.
Mississauga.
Yes, everybody has a story, and Eden has has one for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Fran, thank you for joining
Well,
us,
thank you,
and
Matthew.
we'll see you on the 5th, and certainly look forward to kind of celebrating things with Eden. And we're also we should highlight a little bit later in May, Heritage Mississauga's annual general meeting will take
Yeah,
place
there you
at
go.
United Church,
Yeah.
also connecting to the 200th anniversary. So it's
Yes.
a wonderful
Yeah.
occasion in our city. So Fran, thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank you, Matthew.
Thank you for spending some time with us here on Ask a Historian. And thank you also to Fran Murphy for sharing the history of Eden United Church and connecting us to the 200th anniversary of the congregation. Like, subscribe, and follow us, and we will see you on future episodes of Ask a Historian with Heritage Mississauga.